Google, Microsoft, IBM, the biggest tech companies in the world are all quietly preparing for a single threat, one that could crumble the entire digital infrastructure that we've built for the past 70 years. Right now, the entire planet is dependent on a digital system whose foundations are about to collapse. That's every secret, every transaction, every private message compromised. They all rely on a mathematical assumption that is close to its breaking point. The Q day, as experts call it, is the day when quantum computers are finally unleashed and they break every form of encryption that we have ever developed. The day when digital computing comes to an abrupt end. So, is this threat even real? And if it is there anything that we can do to stop it? To understand why quantum computing is such a big deal, you first have to understand what every computer you've ever used is built on. From the phone in your hand to the computers guiding spacecraft through deep space, everything runs on binary. At the lowest level, it's just ones and O's, tiny electrical switches being turned on and off billions of times per second. Every message you send, every video you watch, every AI model you interact with is ultimately reduced to long strings of these very simple bits. Classical computers are incredibly powerful, but they all share this same limitation. Each bit can only ever be one thing at a time. You're either a 1 or a 0, and never both. Quantum computers break that rule. Instead of bits, they use qubits. And thanks to the strange laws of quantum physics, a qubit doesn't have to choose between being a 1 or a 0. It can exist in a superposition of both at the same time. And that's not a metaphor or an analogy, that is literal. That one difference changes everything. Because when you scale this up, a classical computer has to check possibilities one by one. Is this 1 or 0? Okay, move on. Is this 1 or 0? Each one at a time. A quantum computer can explore many possibilities all at once. It's not just faster in the normal sense, it's like it's working in a higher dimension. And this is exactly why classical computers can't simply catch up. No matter how fast you make them, they are still bound to binary. They're still flipping switches between 1 and 0 step by step. Quantum computers aren't doing that at all. They're leveraging the fundamental rules of reality itself to process information in parallel across a vast space of possibilities. Which means there are certain problems, especially ones involving massive combinations or complex cryptography, that classical computers would take thousands, even millions of years to solve, but a sufficiently powerful quantum computer could solve in minutes. Unfortunately, for our entire digital world, complex cryptography is what current encryption algorithms depend on. Modern encryption, which is the thing that protects your information from getting accessed by anyone on the open internet, is built on complexity and not secrecy. The idea is pretty simple. If someone knows how your encryption works, breaking it would require testing an astronomical number of possibilities. For a classical computer, that could take thousands or even millions of years. But for a sufficiently advanced quantum computer, it could take hours or even minutes. Q-Day is the hypothetical day that quantum computers will be powerful enough to do just that. When that day comes, you can say goodbye to private messaging, secure online banking, and digital privacy of any kind. Now, none of this is new. We have been building quantum computers for the past 2 decades, in fact, and for most of that time, cryptographers believed we still had at least another decade before machines powerful enough to break encryption would exist. But that timeline may have just collapsed. In December 2024, Google unveiled something called the Willow chip, a 105-qubit quantum processor that marked a major leap forward, not just in scale, but also in stability. You see, the biggest hurdle in quantum computing is errors. Qubits are incredibly fragile. The moment they interact with their environment, they lose their quantum state. This is called decoherence, and it's been the single biggest obstacle to building useful quantum computers. For years, adding more more qubits just meant adding more noise, more instability, and more failure. But Willow seems to have changed that. Google demonstrated a benchmark designed to test whether a quantum system could reduce errors as it scales. The task itself wasn't practical. It's known as a random circuit sampling problem, essentially generating and verifying patterns that are extremely hard for classical computers to simulate. It's by no means useful in the real world, but it's one of the best ways to measure raw quantum capability. And Willow didn't just pass the test, it showed that as the system grew larger, error rate actually improved. And that's something we have never seen before. It means that we may have crossed a threshold from experimental machines that barely work to systems that can start becoming reliable. The benchmark took Willow 5 minutes. A classical supercomputer attempting the same calculation would take around 10 septillion years. That's 720 quadrillion times longer than the age of the universe. Naturally, this set off alarm bells across the tech world. The kind of breakthrough many hoped was still far, far away suddenly felt very, very close. In February 2025, Microsoft made its own move. The Majorana 1, a different bet on the same problem that Google was trying to solve. Microsoft's chip uses a design called topological qubits. They argue that these new qubits are inherently more stable than the ones used by Google. This is significant for one big reason. The industry is now beginning to compete on its architectures, and that means better designed quantum computers. Now, IBM has publicly committed to a roadmap for a more efficient kind of quantum system by the end of the decade. Fault-tolerant quantum systems. These are systems that produce concrete results without being obstructed by errors. And the race in this process isn't just American. China is taking this even more seriously than the West has acknowledged. With $15 billion in quantum research and its own milestones, there's a geopolitical race brewing for the future of computing. AI poses a present risk, but it doesn't break encryption. But quantum? It's the only technology whose progress is simultaneously creating an existential threat to all the digital infrastructure that we have. Now that companies are actually scaling quantum investments, there's still one thing lingering on everyone's minds. What exactly is being built? And what will it break first? Over the past 70 years, we've built our society on a specific kind of math. Trust, money, privacy, and power are tied to something that is on the brink of being dismantled. Yet the entire public doesn't even seem to know that this terrifying future is a possibility. If we can't even admit that the problem exists, how do we begin to confront it? Okay, so we've been talking a lot about how quantum computers are going to break encryption, but why is it? What exactly is the math that our current encryption system is designed on? So, imagine you are in charge of the biggest intelligence agency on Earth. Congratulations for your promotion. This means you get a virtually unlimited budget, unlimited time, and every supercomputer you can get your hands on. Today, you are tasked with but one mission: read one encrypted message. You're not going to steal it, you cannot intercept it. Your organization's duty actually sounds a lot simpler than a typical intelligence mission. So, how do you go about reading it? Now, here's what you are really up against. Say the message is protected by RSA-2048, the standard encryption method securing nearly every bank, every government communication, and every encrypted connection on the internet today. Underneath its complex exterior, it works on a single equation. A number that is hundreds of digits long and the product of two enormous prime numbers. Here's how it works. If I were to ask you to multiply two large prime numbers like 1007 and then 1009, you can pull out a calculator and get 1,016,063. But if I just gave you that same 1,016,063 and asked you which two prime numbers I multiplied to get it, well, that is going to take a lot of work. RSA-2048 takes the concept to a frustratingly high ceiling. Imagine prime numbers hundreds of digits long. Even the world's fastest supercomputers would take millions of years to configure the original primes that you need to multiply to get that impossibly long number. The number of combinations to test is larger than the number of atoms in the observable universe. So even if your intelligence agency has access to every classical supercomputer on Earth and the whole world banded together to ensure that this one message is read, by the most generous estimates, it'll still take about 1 trillion years to figure out. Your fancy agency would need to outlive the sun vaporizing the Earth roughly 40,000 times over. This isn't just some thought experiment, it is the literal security guarantee protecting your bank account right now. Now, give that same problem to a quantum computer running Shor's algorithm, and it finishes it in hours. In 1994, a mathematician named Peter Shor proved something the cryptography world did not want to be true. He developed a mathematical formula designed to run on a quantum computer. His formula directly targeted the impossible task of finding the two prime numbers from the longer number using something called superposition. If you've been watching our channel, then you're probably already familiar with the concept of quantum superposition. We've been doing a series on quantum physics, and it's been really fun. I'll leave the link to the playlist at the end of this video. But just a quick refresher, quantum superposition is the idea that a quantum particle can exist in multiple states at the same time. So a classical bit is a 1 or a 0. A qubit, however, can be 1, 0, or any combination of both simultaneously. Not because we don't know its state, but because it genuinely holds multiple possibilities at once. It's only when you measure it that it collapses into a single value. And this is where Shor's insight becomes a little troublesome. Factoring large numbers, the backbone of modern encryption, is hard for classical computers because they have to try possibilities one by one. Even the fastest supercomputers would take an absurd amount of time to break something like RSA encryption. But a quantum computer running Shor's algorithm doesn't approach the problem the same way. Instead of checking each possibility step by step, it uses superposition to explore many possible factors all at once. Then through another quantum effect called interference, it amplifies the correct answers and cancels out the wrong ones. Shor's algorithm has carried serious weight for 30 years now, but there has been one thing that has been holding it back. For the algorithm to actually work, it'll need a quantum computer with millions of stable qubits to break real-world encryption like RSA. Now, the Willow chip that was unveiled 2 years ago has just 105, so we are still in the safe zone for now, but still. The wall between us and the break is engineering, not physics or math. The math is beatable, and the physics is achievable. The day a quantum computer becomes powerful enough and stable enough to run Shor's algorithm against real-world encryption. It's the ultimate event for cybersecurity, as the geopolitical consequences will be instantaneous and have far-reaching ramifications. According to the Global Risk Institute's annual quantum threat timeline, Q-Day is going to arrive within 10 to 15 years. The US's NIST is operating on the assumption that a migration to post-quantum encryption must happen before 2035. National security agencies across France, UK, Germany, and other territories have also launched guidelines around it. The near-term effects are getting warmer and the collapse feels imminent. Every signed software update becomes forgeable, so your smartphone, your PC, your Mac updates can all be malware, and yet it can appear as if they came from Apple or Microsoft. Every website you visit becomes vulnerable. The comfort of seeing HTTPS in an address bar is gone, and your connections become readable to anyone looking to fish for your information or your online activity. And you may be wondering, how is any of this new? Here's the scariest part. The hacks that happen today require some level of social engineering and bait, where hackers attempt to disguise fake links and lead you to click on the wrong things. Every hack that happens today requires somebody along the chain to make a mistake. It's like forgetting to lock your house when you leave. On Q-Day, it'll be like everyone in the entire world instantly having access to a master key that opens all locks on Earth. Even if you follow the strongest conventional guidelines in the world, your data becomes trivial information for anyone running a capable quantum computer. Take cryptocurrency as an example. It's built on cryptography. It's right there in the name. And cryptography is exactly what quantum computers are designed to break. But the real danger isn't just what happens on Q-Day. It's what's already happening now. There are people quietly collecting encrypted data, old transactions, dormant wallets, entire blockchains, not because they can read it today, but because they believe they will be able to read it in the future. It's called harvest now, decrypt later. And although crypto is one of the biggest targets, this harvest now, decrypt later mantra is currently being used by bad actors to collect every kind of data they can about you. Everything from your name, your location, your employment status, email addresses, everything. They use all of this information to create a detailed profile of who you are. Today, this profile is sold to the highest bidder to target you with ads. On Q-Day, whatever guardrails currently exist will be easily bypassed to do far more dangerous things. This is why I specifically reached out to Incogni to sponsor today's episode. The danger of having your data exposed on the internet becomes far greater once Q-Day arrives, but you shouldn't wait until then to do something about it. Incogni is a service that removes your personal information from the places that you never knew that it was being stored in. Data brokers, people search sites, and directories that treat your identity like a product. By law, these companies have to delete your data if you ask, but doing that yourself can take weeks, months, or even years. Incogni handles it automatically, continuously sending removal requests and working in the background to keep your data out of reach. And they've just introduced a new feature called custom removals. If you find a site exposing your personal information, you can simply send the link to Incogni, and their team will work to get it taken down, even if it's outside of their usual network. If you want to protect yourself from getting targeted once quantum computers are able to break encryption, get your data out of the hands of data brokers by going to incogni.com/aperture deal and use the code Aperture deal to get 60% off an annual plan. Now back to our story. Many older wallets, especially ones using outdated cryptographic standards, are essentially ticking time bombs. The moment quantum computers become powerful enough, those protections disappear. These private keys can be derived, wallets can be opened, and it doesn't stop there. Even transactions happening in real time could become vulnerable, which creates a terrifying scenario. So, imagine Q-Day hits, the news spreads instantly. People panic. They rush to move or sell their crypto before it's too late. But that reaction is exactly what attackers are waiting for. Because initiating a transaction exposes information, and in a quantum world, that brief window could be enough. So the act of trying to escape the trap becomes the trap. A mass sell-off wouldn't just crash the market, it would turn into a feeding frenzy where every transaction is intercepted and every move exploited, like fish sprinting straight into a net that they can't see. Think about VPNs, data protections, cloud storage, company info, social security, all of that is within reach on Q-Day. The worst part is that Q-Day isn't a system failure. Companies will attempt to blame engineers and make a fall guy for its aftermath, but the bitter truth is that the math was beaten, and the assumption we've held for 70 years just simply stopped being true. The US's NIST has created its post-quantum standards, but actually getting people to follow them, that is another fight entirely. Migrating to these new standards means replacing the encryption that the entire internet sits on. It's like trying to replace a house's foundation without evacuating its residents. Most of the systems that need to migrate aren't even aware that the foundation is shaky, and that is a serious problem. Today, the world is happily entertaining AI debates on stages, flaunting CEOs that present themselves as visionaries of the future, but backstage, the cryptographic transition is a catastrophic headache that's driving classified briefings and conferences that most of the public has never heard of. There are institutions quietly preparing for what is coming, but the rest of us are going to be feeling the ripple effects of decisions that we never took part in. In 1989, after the collapse of East Germany, citizens formed the Stasi regime's headquarters and found 111 kilometers worth of paper files inside. Surveillance records on roughly 1 in 3 East Germans. For a population of 16 million, this was no trivial discovery. Conversations were transcribed, movements were logged, patterns of behavior were mapped out. Friends and family of citizens were exposed as informants. Throughout their regime, the Stasi maintained one of the most invasive surveillance states in modern human history, and yet they were limited. This was paper, typewriters, physical labor, and maintenance. All of these actions were necessary to keep their records. Surveillance had a hefty budget and a visible ceiling. There was a natural limit to how much of the state's population they could watch at any given time. Today, major intelligence agencies generate more surveillance data in a single day than the Stasi collected over its entire 40-year existence. But at least, for now, your most private digital information still has a line of defense, and that is encryption. Even governments run into it. Apple, for example, has repeatedly refused to build a backdoor into its encryption, even under pressure from law enforcement and terrorism-related investigations. Their position has been consistent. If you build a backdoor for one case, you create a vulnerability for everyone. So for now, there are limits, and these are hard limits. Even the most powerful institutions in the world can't simply access whatever they want. But that balance only exists because encryption works. Quantum computing threatens to remove that barrier entirely. Because once governments have access to sufficiently powerful quantum machines, they don't need the cooperation from Apple. They don't need backdoors, they don't need permission, they can just unlock it. At that point, encryption stops being a safeguard and becomes a delay, a temporary obstacle between data being captured and data being read. And remember, a lot of that data is already being collected, stored, and archived, just waiting. So the real question isn't just what governments will be able to see in the future, it's what they've already seen, but simply haven't been able to read yet. It's like Schrodinger's data, which is very fitting for a discussion about quantum computers, if I do say so myself. Cryptography protects journalists, lawyers, whistleblowers, and ordinary people from authoritarian states. In the same breath, it also lets those same states keep their own secrets perfectly. Math never picks sides. Q-Day is the hammer that breaks both sides simultaneously. Whether that's a loss or a correction of an error, the institutions building the future are yet to decide, but neither has anyone else. The internet works because every system has good enough reasons to trust across borders. Your laptop in Sao Paulo can verify that a server in Hong Kong is who it claims to be because they both speak the same cryptographic language. That feature is what made the global internet possible. Post-quantum cryptography flips our expectations in a messy, messy way. Not everyone will migrate to safer quantum-proof designs. Instead, it will be a slow process that knocks global economics off balance. Major banks will migrate first. EU government systems will follow, and then we'll see the same happen to wealthy nations and their critical infrastructure. Later on, smaller institutions, developing economies, and legacy systems may attempt to migrate, but that might be much later, if ever. When systems migrate at radically different speeds, the trust between them shatters. The single global internet we've taken for granted for 30 years will fragment into tiers. Today, when you buy something online from another country, the transaction happens in seconds. Your laptop talks to Amazon, Amazon talks to MasterCard, MasterCard talks to your bank talks to a settlement system, a device on the other side of the world ships towards you. Dozens of digital handshakes across multiple borders, all happening so fast that you don't notice them. And every one of those handshakes works because every system in that chain speaks the same cryptographic language. In a new post-quantum internet, those systems don't all migrate at the same time. Some networks become quantum safe and others stay exposed. When two systems try to connect, the security of the connection is only as strong as the weakest party in the chain. So your bank may have migrated, your bank's counterpart in another country may not have. The settlement system between them may be running on borrowed time. The device shipping to you may pull software updates from a network that's behind the curve. What you experience is not necessarily a more expensive transaction, it's a more fragmented one. Some routes work, others slow down, some break entirely. A purchase that moves seamlessly across 5 jurisdictions today isn't going to be the same. In the future, it has to find a path where every link in the chain has caught up with the same cryptographic standard. This is the issue. Today's interconnected world works largely because we can all understand the foundations built on binary. When quantum genuinely becomes a thing, those foundations stop being shared and the world stops working the way we've taken for granted. It's all beyond speculation at this point. Back in the day, cryptographic transitions reflected a similar pattern. When digital security moved to AES and then SHA-256, it took many years and lots of legacy systems were exposed. Currently, the necessary migration to post-quantum protection is being described as the largest infrastructure project in the history of the internet. The internet has worked the same everywhere for the past 3 decades, and that uniformity is what made it so strong. But that is about to end. What comes next isn't the death of the internet, no, it's the death of the old internet. A post-digital age is guaranteed to come, and it will look like a tiered network, secured within its own self-sustained walls. Everything outside of these walls will feel like a dangerous wasteland. Whatever happens in that future won't be the hopeful idea we briefly believed the internet was. Everything covered so far is what quantum breaks. But they're not just engines of destruction. It's not all gloom and doom. They're also capable of some really powerful and awesome things. The math behind the digital age, binary, is actually incredibly good at a lot of things. It's super reliable, it's very precise, it's perfect for logic-based operations. That's why it powers everything from search engines and video streaming to financial systems and our modern AI. It excels at structured problems, step-by-step communications, and tasks where outcomes can be broken down into clear sequences. And binary is the reason that we have the internet. The reason we can simulate rockets, edit films, and build entire virtual worlds. It's not a limitation in most of the domains we live in today. But that same structure is also where it starts to break down. There are entire categories of problems that don't fit neatly into a step-by-step logic. Problems where the number of possibilities explodes so quickly that even the fastest classical computers hit a wall. Things like accurately simulating molecular interactions, understanding complex chemical reactions, or solving certain advanced physics problems. These aren't just hard problems, they scale in a way that makes them practically impossible for binary systems to handle in a meaningful time frame. And no matter how much we improve classical computers, faster processors, more memory, better architecture, we are still working within the same fundamental framework. Are you familiar with Moore's law? If not, here's the simple version. It's the idea that the number of transistors on a chip doubles every couple of years, making computers exponentially more powerful over time. For decades, that trend held, but now it's starting to break. We've shrunk transistors to the point where they're only a few atoms wide. At that scale, electrons stop behaving like clean, predictable signals. They begin to tunnel, to blur, to exist in probabilities rather than certainties. The stability that classical computing depends on starts to break down at that level. In other words, we don't just run into an engineering problem. We ran into the limits of physics itself. And that's where everything changes, because quantum computing isn't just a faster version of what we already have. It's what happens when we stop resisting those quantum effects and start using them instead. It's not a replacement for classical computing, and it's more of a leap beyond the boundaries that defined the digital age in the first place. Which means the real story isn't just what quantum breaks, it's what it unlocks too. In a post-digital world, we'll be stepping into entirely new categories of problems. Problems that classical computers were never going to solve, no matter how much time or power we threw at them. The cryptographic collapse we've been talking about is really just a side effect. It's a consequence of a much larger shift. Q-Day is the deadline. It's urgent, and it's disruptive, and it's very real, but it won't be the main event. Because beyond that one moment is where things are actually going to start getting really interesting. And one of the clearest examples is a field that's quietly been hitting a wall for years, a wall that most people didn't even realize exists. Designing new medicines sounds like something we should have mastered by now. We have supercomputers, massive biological data sets, and AI systems that can predict protein structures with remarkable accuracy. And yet, creating drugs is still slow, it's expensive, and heavily dependent on trial and error. That's because, at its core, it is a quantum problem. Every molecule is governed by quantum mechanics. The way atoms bond, the way electrons interact, the way a drug binds to a target in the body. All of it depends on complex quantum behavior. To truly understand it, you need to simulate those interactions precisely. And classical computers can't do that at scale. The number of possible configurations grows so quickly that even our best systems are forced to approximate. So instead of knowing what will work, we make educated guesses, we test, we fail, and then we repeat that process over and over again. This is why big pharma industry giants like Roche, Pfizer, and AstraZeneca have all launched quantum computing programs. Google DeepMind's AlphaFold revolutionized protein structure prediction by using classical AI. Yet, the founders themselves have admitted that the next frontier will actually require quantum computing for molecular interactions. Today, our industrial civilization revolves around a small number of materials. This status quo has been considered good enough for the past century. Lithium-ion batteries power a lot of our energy, but their chemistry also hits a theoretical limit. Solar cells only convert a fraction of incoming light. All this time, we've been optimizing inside the constraints of the materials that we found, not the materials that we designed. Quantum genuinely gives us the ability to develop new materials at the molecular level and to build them fit for purpose instead of just finding them by accident. Currently, we have some examples of phenomena that we are aware could change our lives, yet we just don't have the right technology to make the changes stick. It's like capturing lightning in a bottle. For example, actually, there's a bacterial enzyme capable of trapping nitrogen from the atmosphere, and it could do this at room temperature without industrial input. The problem? We can't model it, because the molecule is too quantum mechanically complex. Microsoft's research division has published a quantum simulation of this enzyme as a target application for an eventual quantum computing future. When it's possible, we would revolutionize fertilizer production and reduce its effect on global energy supplies. We would be designing a new relationship with our physical world, one where we design materials from first principles instead of optimizing within the constraints of what we've happened to find. Quantum directly addresses a whole class of decisions in the modern world. So far, we've only been able to solve the problems we encounter in an approximate sense. Stuff like routing packages, allocating national budgets, and balancing loads and power grids. Approximate solutions cost the global economy enormous sums of money in waste, inefficiency, and missed allocations. Even with all that in mind, we have been doing a decent job. It's impressive. For certain types of optimization, quantum computing will provide solutions that have never been seriously considered prior, and the applications span industries. Today, Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan are exploring quantum optimization for portfolio risks. Similarly, other companies from airlines to car manufacturers are looking to apply quantum research in their designs. Once we scale to quantum, we'd be living in a world that runs on better math. Supply chains will route more efficiently, financial systems will allocate capital more precisely, power grids would light up the world without burning its resources completely. Most of these gains are invisible to consumers, but the final effect is a civilization that operates closer to its mathematical limits than what was possible in the digital age. Unlike what we have today with smartphones, laptops, and tablets, quantum hardware isn't going to be a commercialized experience for every citizen. There's no quantum laptop coming. These machines are too expensive, too fragile, and require cooling in temperatures colder than deep space. They'll also be operated by a tiny number of institutions. In a nutshell, access to quantum is limited due to physics, and this will be the biggest challenge. Today, there is some meaningful quantum computing in existence. If we zoom out, it's fair to say that quantum hardware is only present in a few dozen institutions globally. As for the rest of the world, and the billions of people, hundreds of governments, millions of companies, well, access to quantum would only be possible through intermediaries, middlemen that dictate how, when, and why everyone else can use it. At the peak of our digital age, we managed to put a supercomputer in the pockets of half the planet. In the post-digital age, at least least at the start, the most powerful tool ever built will be behind the walls of a few dozen institutions. Thanks to all the doom and gloom of AI, a question at the forefront of everyone's mind when faced with quantum computing is, will this replace my job too? And it's a fair concern, but it's a lot deeper than what AI affects. Quantum's replacement is more targeted at institutions than anything else. Take pharmaceutical companies, for example. The ones with quantum access will completely outclass competitors without any access. It's the same with banks and governments. This displacement is at scale, so the reactions from governments and other large entities would be more of a concentrated effort to prevent it. With AI, your local representative doesn't care that you lost your coding job, but when quantum threatens the existence of a government itself, well, there's nothing more necessary than confronting the change together. Right now, the decisions being made are the following. Who funds quantum? Who controls the supply chain for the rare materials it requires? Who licenses the hardware? Who sets the standards? Who trains the workforce? All of these questions are being asked and answered in rooms most people will never enter, by people we will never see, with consequences that will outlive us all. For all of its flaws, the digital age was the ultimate democracy for technological power, but the post-digital age is being built differently. And who gets to build it is what determines the kind of civilization that we will get in the new age. The only question left is whether we are awake enough to shape this future too. You're standing in a doorway right now. Behind you is a room you've lived in for the past 70 years. Every smile, every fight, every love and heartbreak was witnessed by this room. Ahead of you is another room, one that isn't fully visible. From where you stand, you can feel a sense of hope, a genuine feeling that this new room is where you were always heading towards. But it's being built right now by people you don't know, with materials you don't understand. Living in this doorway means something specific for us. It means trusting systems whose foundations have an expiry date known as Q-Day, sending messages already being recorded by people waiting to read them later, watching your future being decided without your input. The room behind you is closing on its own. The room ahead of you is being built whether you step into it or not. For now, all you can do is exist in a state of superposition, not knowing whether to be excited or terrified about the future until you can observe it for yourself. And isn't that what quantum is all about? If you enjoyed this video, we've got an entire playlist of quantum physics videos we know you'd love. Click the video on screen to keep watching.